Welcome to Episode 6 of Primetime UGC. I'm Captain P.F. Dennis, and my co-host Phil Bones, well, he should be here any minute. He mentioned something about an orb experience. Anyway, we've got a great show lined up. We have another author interview, along with the news and bug report, as well as the feature request of the week and much more. So hang in there and we'll see you on the other side.
All this training, battle drills, and killing works up quite a thirst, and even though we are Jem'Hadar, we occasionally get fatigued, especially when we become honored elders like me. That's why I love Victory Energy Drink. Victory gives you that 26-hour boost that Jem'Hadar over 20 sometimes require. First, and Victory contains half the sugars of other energy drinks. First, so it's much less filling and won't slow you down. First. What is it, second? Victory is also the only energy drink that contains the isogenic enzyme that every Jem'Hadar needs. That's right. It's brewed from the finest trinucleic fungi this side of the Cabrel system. It keeps me alert so I can keep killing and maiming all day long without tiring. And it's got half the calories of other brands. I am First Ren, and I am tired. And at our age, we are all tired. We drink to reclaim our energy. This we do gladly, because we are Jem'Hadar. And remember, victory is light. Victory is light.
Hi, my name's Phil Bones, and you're watching the news on Primetime UGC. Welcome to Primetime UGC, you're watching the news. This week, Foundry challenges have been set by Brandflakes. Authors request new ways of getting their missions noticed, and new authors cry out for help on the official forums. This week marks the end of Brandflakes' Foundry competition. There have been many authors of all sorts who have admitted missions, and it has had an incredible turnout. Let's hope we can continue to motivate our favorite dev to keep it up as proposed every couple of fortnights. Stay tuned to the official forums on how to vote for your favorites. Authors are crying out for an official way in which to get their missions noticed. Not all STO players have the ability to connect on social networks and create wonderful visual mediums for advertisement purposes out of game. The most beneficial ways currently are to visit Starbase UGC for advice, post a thread on the official forums, request a review, or list your mission on various threads or sites in which already have an audience. It would be really nice if Cryptic could do something within their site or in-game to help authors publicize their missions. New authors are desperately trying to get feedback and learn more about the Foundry. Unfortunately, at the moment, the only way to do so is by posting in the bugs thread. For the benefit of the community, more mature Foundry authors need to visit the mission database and discussion thread. By doing so, you are not only helping the Foundry community, but passing the knowledge you have gained on to others. That's all for this week's news, and if you have anything you'd like to add and think is newsworthy, let us know at mailbag@primetimeugc.com. This week on the Bug Report, we take a look at the bugs affecting Purchaser Foundry as well as Foundry slots. To purchase Foundry and use Foundry, you must have an available character slot. It is always best when creating your first Foundry toon to keep its defaults. You will need a Federation toon if making a mission for the Fed side, or a Klingon toon if making a KDF mission. Do not be scared to delete your Foundry toon, as they do not affect Foundry saved missions. If none of this applies to you, and you are still having trouble, try again some other time or submit a ticket through support on the Stowe site. Bear in mind that once you have purchased Foundry, you will still need to procure some Foundry slots. The Foundry slot purchase bug is affecting a lot of people. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Most people find that rebooting the game may help, or even reinstalling your DirectX. The most effective way, thanks to Terra Revived, is to create a new character, delete the newly created character, immediately go into the Foundry, and it might say you have 8 slots, and if it does, you will need to buy either a 2 or 4 pack, then create a Foundry character with default settings. Once again, if this is not working, submit a ticket. Cryptic does have fixes for both these bugs, and are hoping to get it in the next available patch, in which will not affect any other aspect of gameplay. That's it for the Bug Report. Thanks for watching.
Don't hate me because I've got gorgeous wrinkles. Some girls are born with it, but for the rest of us, there's Baudet. It's made from the neural secretions of the finest galamites. Nothing dehydrates the skin more gently and naturally, and Baudet contains nearly twice the concentration of any other dehydrating wrinkle cream, leaving your face rough and abrasive. Irresistible. Don't hate me because my wrinkles are beautiful. Not that it matters. You probably aren't good enough for me anyway. Baudet. For the rest of us.
Did someone say feature request? Yes, it is that time of the show again. The competition is still on for the best 5, top 5, so submit your best 5, top 5 feature requests to mailbag@primetimeugc.com. This week's feature request comes from Kirkvat. He would like the possibility to change the mat of any given object in Foundry. Say instead of having 3 different types of building blocks with different textures, we could have a primitive drop-down menu to select various costumes for details. I think this is a great idea, and would give Cryptic more space for Foundry code on their servers, as well as enhance Foundry's customizability. Tune in next week for the best of the best top 5 feature requests.
Hello, I am Solicitor Brand. Have you been injured in a transporter accident? Or maybe some careless hoarder rubbed against you in the turbo lift someplace, causing third-degree burns? How about all those terrible viruses that alien visitors bring with them to your planet? It's enough to make your lobes itch. Well, I'm here to tell you that you could be entitled to gold-pressed latinum, and a lot of it. Like the 182nd rule of acquisition states, if all else fails, sue. That's where I come in. I will fight to my last breath to get us the latinum you deserve, or at least what you can get. Just listen to Mr. Bollock, one of my clients.
It's true. My wife and I were finally able to get away to Riza for a well-earned vacation. We arrived as planned and beamed down from a Bolian transport vessel with the rest of the passengers. When we reached the surface, one of my kidneys had been replaced with some Andorian woman's carry-on bag. Later that night, a lifeguard had to pry my missing kidney out of a stray targ's mouth. It really put a damper on the whole vacation. Somebody had to pay, and Solicitor Brand made sure they did.
Thank you, Mr. Bollock. I know how terrible it was for you, but I'm glad I could help you get the justice you deserved. The transport owner took care of all Mr. Bollock's medical expenses and extended hospital stay. And I didn't even collect a single slip of latinum, thanks to Mrs. Bollock and her talent for umox. And remember, if I don't win, you don't pay much.
Bran, he'll fix your problem if he can. Oh, Bran, for compensation, he's your man. This week on Primetime UGC's author interview, we welcome Harriet. Well, Harriet, we welcome you to Primetime UGC. And I guess the first question, and I ask this of all our authors, how long have you played STO, and when did you make your first Foundry mission?
Well, I'd say that the answer, as we're relative to when each is released, is about the same. I started the first day of regular release with the game. I followed it before, but I never went into beta. I started working with the Foundry the first day it was still in beta, I suppose, but the first day is released to holodeck. I worked on something that didn't work out and then went into that. I'd say probably April or so I released my first mission and was already starting on the second, which took until December, technically. But I didn't work the whole time. Kept stopping and then going back. And let me just say, by the way, it's thank you both for bringing me on here. I mean, when you see people like Alamak and Sori and Bazag and all those people you have, and then you have someone who has roughly 2 missions out, roughly 30 reviews total. It's a testament that listeners, if you go and ingratiate yourself to these hosts, so you think do. I'm sure there are rules of acquisition that apply to what's going on.
Yes, 500 gold press platinum.
Yeah.
So, Harriet, the one thing I really like about your missions are the awesome posters. Is there a particular element of the Foundry creation towards a mission that you enjoy the most?
Maybe posters, as in you mean the ones that I put up on top of the missions for Starbase UGC? Is that what you mean by posters?
Yeah.
All I did is I literally go into the game and take screenshots and then edit together on a simple, a fairly simple, I forget if it's free or not, but simple just image editing software. Again, these are just 2 missions, so he loves these 2 posters. but thank you all the same. It's the one for More Data Part 1 was very simple because all I did was take screenshots of the character editor in the Foundry itself. The star background is the star background of the character editor, and then I just merged them together, put some text over it. It was very fun. It's a bit harder to get the one for my from Both Ends of Time, which is the image that I use is on a ground map, and I put characters in front of it and had to work on getting the black images around the characters and make decent success, apparently. But I'm sorry, what was the initial question again?
What aspect of the Foundry creation towards your mission do you enjoy the most?
I guess it is the coming up with the ideas. What I love about the Foundry is the opportunity to add my ideas to a form of Star Trek. The ability there's a character who is my chief engineer, but she's on special assignment, Saga, in my More Data #1. And I'd always thought, ever since the end of Nemesis, I thought, okay, what are the next androids going to be? We can't end here. We can't end android research here. And so I thought, what would be the 25th century series? When they go and do the 25th century series, they have to have an android. And what would an android I would like be? And so I was able to add Saga in there and the characters, but I would say also a lot of almost every mission that I'm thinking about, have done, or I'm thinking about doing is essentially fixing problems that contradictions or things that are contradictions, things that could be made more harmonious between the different episodes you see. Well, I think one of the best images that fits my idea of particularly meshing contradictions together, because I can also mesh just ideas that could fit but aren't contradictory. But meshing ideas together actually was something Marvel Comics did with a thing they called the No Prize. And the idea is that congratulations, you get no prize, because different comic book companies were giving out money or other such things. But there are different permutations of the no prize, but the kind I particularly like was they would give the no prize to people who pointed out a contradiction in the vast Marvel Comics continuity, but then provided an answer that makes it fit together. And I just have always liked that idea, and particularly with stories that I like. But I have this instinct even to some degree anyway. But particularly with stories I like, I love finding ways to make contradictions not contradictory. And so to be able to put my ideas out there for as many people as I can get to see them, and to hopefully think, yeah, that makes sense, and as well, that's enjoyable to play. That's probably my favorite aspect of the Foundry.
What would you say is the series that you most draw your inspiration from?
It probably would be The Next Generation, but that's the one that I got into Star Trek seriously right before Star Trek 4, so I got The Next Generation and the series that followed that I spent most of my fandom with. That's sort of maybe the one I get the feel from, but I draw in details from all the series, particularly since my From Both Ends of Time is essentially what are the Suliban doing now, because we didn't have any Suliban in the original series because they hadn't been created at that point, or Next Generation, what are they doing now? And plus, how does the temporal Cold War, which again was not created until Enterprise, how does this interact with essentially Kirk never having met them, Picard never having seen it? That sort of thing, bringing the details, all the details that I know from the different series, finding a way for them to mesh together is what I have felt the most desire to do.
How do you approach a map environmentally?
Maps are not one of my strengths. I would say probably if I can use a pre-made one and just alter it a little bit, that would be my preferred thing. The closest thing for environments that I would do is place characters through the contacts or the wandering characters. Have them bring life and have them bring the feel to the environment that I want. If I need to build something, I do. The most I've done is build essentially a city environment on one of the meadows that we have. There's a space station that I have that it's in more data, and I love this part. But in the far back, I put 2 Dabo tables, and I have if you go back there, you see that on one of the Dabo tables, there's an Orion woman dancing, actually on the table on the side. And there are a bunch of men gathered around that Dabo table. Next to it, there's a Dabo table with, I used the costume of the Ryson bartender, a mustached plump man, and he's dancing on that, and there are a bunch of women surrounding that one. And then in the meantime, you have shopkeepers and just people of different species wandering around. I had to build a map to make quarters for where my Ferengi were staying. I will build what I have to build, but that is not my strength. It's definitely the closest strength for map making is adding character and environment through the characters, I suppose.
Who do you write your missions for?
Well, it's definitely for me to, as at the core, my hope is to, from there, get as many people as I see to play and like them.
How important is combat to you in the mission versus, say, the story?
I would say that the two things. I mean, story is one of the key things for me. I'd say the other thing that is important I would think of as player interaction. Of that, combat is certainly the easiest to put in there, and is certainly no less valid than if you try to put a non-combat interaction in. So I would say just having you play through, you click to read the dialogues without any variation, without any player input could be interesting, but it's harder to be interesting. Putting combat in when it makes sense, then that is a great thing to do. I'd say that if you can do things that put in player choice that are non-combat, that's just as valid. But it's also much harder. Conflict is what drives stories. You have non-combat conflict, and you have combat-based conflict. And not only each of them valid, but each can enhance the other. I mean, when you understand why people are fighting, or if the story is driven by a confusion as to why people are fighting, that enhances the combat. And at the same time, imagine, you should probably give warning to this if you're going to do it, but imagine a diplomatic mission that you could foul up and actually have to fight your way out of. That could give a bigger drive to trying to find that non-combat solution. So not only are each valid in their own course, but they really each can be used to enhance each other.
If you could ask Cryptic to put in one feature, what would that one feature be?
I would say I would like variables to be added, so that instead of when you get to an end to a dialogue, or I suppose you'd also be able to put this in clicking a console or having completed a mission, instead of just saying for a dialogue, fail, succeed, that you could say at the end of one branch of a dialogue tree, A equals true, and then you could, I don't know, up to B, C, D, etc., and potentially up to Z, so I guess 26 variables per mission. And if you could have it so that you could then, at the beginning of in addition to component complete, or all the other things you can do to trigger if A is true, so that something would only happen would happen or not happen based on other previous actions, to make it easier to have, if not branching, at least divergent elements, and have choice be able to matter and be more in a more intricate but also easier way.
Have you done UGC or game modding or anything like this before?
No, this is the first MMO I ever played. I remember having it when I was young, a TI 99.4a, and I typed some things in BASIC, but I didn't even have a disk drive, so there wouldn't have been much point in saving. I am coming to this from someone who fallen in love with Star Trek, and when found out about the game, wanted to play it to continue the Prime universe, and then finding out about the Foundry, I loved the idea of being able to put my ideas into the mix.
With free-to-play, with all the new people coming in, what advice could you give a new author?
Considering that a new author would be listening to this, so they probably would know about the Starbase UGC, just going there and looking at the tutorials and getting to know people like you and other people in the chat room, and the podcast in the chat room, to have people you can ask questions of would definitely help. I would say the other advice I would give is to come to the Foundry being prepared for the idea that some things that, as it stands now, some things that should be simple will be very hard or even impossible. But and be prepared for that. But at the same time, don't assume that just because Cryptic hasn't put a feature into the Foundry, that there isn't a way to work around and get perhaps all of what you want, at least perhaps some of what you want. I could tell you just from both ends of time, what I wanted to do is to essentially, you get into a situation where suddenly there are a bunch of Suliban you can't trust, but not necessarily you can't trust every Suliban, and you keep running into Suliban, you're given the choice, okay, are you going to trust them or not trust them? And one map, I had a situation where you would have been about 16 different ending possibilities based on multiple encounters at the end of this map. And it did not work for me at all. Sometimes there were just errors in my setting it up, but also I think I know for a fact dialogue triggered when it shouldn't have triggered, because it wasn't consistent, because every replay it was different. But I simplified it. I still have some choice. It's not as much as I'd like, but I was able to do it. And so be prepared for problems that you can get, if not sometimes all of what you want, sometimes some of what you want, just not always in the most obvious way.
What was the best criticism or advice you ever received?
Well, as I said, I've only had about 30 reviews, so I did get unfortunately, it was a 1 star. Might have gone back. They might have gone back and changed it. I have to track it down, but I did get a 1 star review, basically by someone who thought that my mission started somewhere on Starbase 39 when it really was just outside Starbase 39. So that criticism at least made me probably avoid confusing a few more people by seeing it. Probably the best criticism I could get would be in the future with help with spelling checking, because as was in the Bite-Size UGC, the Bite-Size UGC review, it did note there's spelling checking, so a few spelling errors that were in my More Data mission. YouTube have seen me in chat, so I start from many more spelling errors than average, but the goal is to get it right, not a percentage improvement on the starting. Because I have had so few reviews, I can't give you that much of an answer.
So you've got From Both Ends of Time, and you've also got Theft of Honor. What's next?
I won't be able to get back to the Foundry beyond Simple Revisions for a while, but Theft of Honor is part of More Data #1, which that's probably the next one I would work on. It is about Android research, and specifically, it's about acknowledging the fact that, or looking at, or trying to bring in all the other robots and androids that had been encountered in the series. I'd say particularly TOS, because when the episode of TNG that had Scotty came out, they did a novelization, and one of the changes in the differences in the novel, and I thought was better than the episode, is that when Scotty meets Data, he's a bit horrified at first. He talks about all these androids that they met that were always enemies. We should need to acknowledge all these androids of the past, and if you're doing android research, wouldn't you go back to Mudd's planet, which is indeed specifically that's the next one I want to do. So I have to, among other, wait for time, but also wait for proper TOS era assets to come in. And there's one other that carries on an idea from my Suleiman Temporal Cold War one, that it carries on the idea. It's not so much a direct sequel though, but let's just say that I need Enterprise era assets to tell that one properly.
Okay.
So I need some more assets in the Foundry as well before I can get to these things. Thank you again. Thank you both so much.
No, thank you, Harriet, and it was a pleasure having you on Primetime UGC, and we hope you come back and visit us again soon.
Block. Strike. Oh, by the sword of Kalis. Wake. Wake, little warrior. You should have taken that batak in 4 moves. Ah! What? Klingons don't fly. Stop it right now. Wait a minute. Did you have a meal this morning before the contest?
No, Father.
No? Foolish child. That is why you failed. You must eat a good meal to keep your strength up and be alert. Come, I have just the thing. Kellogg's Rock Bites, the live cereal that contains all the nutrients a growing Klingon warrior needs. And they taste great too. Why, we've had Rock Bites from the House of Kellogg around our table for generations. Why, 1 bowl of this, and you'll be able to ground your friend out there into dust. You will have your vengeance, my little warrior. And remember the proverb, revenge is a dish best served cold, and Rock Bites is a cold cereal. It is a meal fit for Kalis himself, and it's part of an honorable breakfast. Now go out there and gut your enemy. Ha 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 ha.
Welcome to Foundry Essentials. This week's Foundry Essentials addresses a very popular list of questions. First up is a quick tutorial on how to fight alongside an enemy. The key to a lot of these type of effects is recostuming. Let's look at that now. Let's look at a space map. We want our captain and a Klingon friend to fight off a Romulan attacker. Klingon mobs will fight Romulan mobs by design, but will also fight Federation mobs. The only way to make this work is to redress a Federation mob as a Klingon mob. This is a very simple step, but it comes with a caveat. You can dress a Fed ship up as a Klingon ship, but you can't change the standard weaponry. So these ships, no matter what their costume, will always fire the weapons of the original faction, in this case, phasers and photon torpedoes. The same is also true with ground maps. If you dress a Davidian as a spider, it still acts like a Davidian. So if this is something that you're willing to live with, let's continue. I already placed the Romulan enemy on the map. Now let's place our Klingon friends. You have to remember to pay attention to an enemy's description, because they spawn according to number of players and not by rank. If you are authoring a mission for solo players, the minimum amount of ships will spawn. The more players, the higher the number of ships in the selected class of mob. For this example, we're going to use a Federation battleship. Only one will spawn for a solo player, but we'll relocate the rest of the mob in case up to 5 people want to play. Keep in mind that if the story calls for 1 battleship, it won't make sense if 3 show up. Let's place the Klingon ally on the map. In reality, it's a Fed battleship. Highlighting the mob in our asset list on the left reveals the actors within the mob, along with their individual settings. These are basically their names and costumes. Mob behavior cannot be individually assigned. All actors within a mob will behave the same way, as those traits can only be assigned in the general settings. And although this rule is not 100% reliable, it's usually the actor with the lowest number within a mob that spawns first, and that is for space mobs. For ground mobs, the lowest number is usually the higher ranking NPC, that is, say, the captain or commander, etc., depending on the mob chosen. Now let's choose the costume for our Klingon friend. Because it's a battleship, we'll use the Vorcha class for this tutorial. Now to name him. The name that will appear in the mission is in the contact field. So that's the field we must write the name into. I'll just type in Klingon Buddy. Okay, that should do it. Now just one more thing. I'm going to remove the higher numbered actors to a section of the map where the player will not see them. Removing just the actor you want to use will not work because you need the mob proximity marker to make sure your friend attacks accordingly. Let's see how that works. Okay, that looks good to me. Now let's try the same thing on the ground with Remans as the enemy, with some Klingon friends. Alright, that seems to work great too. And the Klingons seem to be having a lot of fun. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of Foundry Essentials. In the Federation justice system, the people are represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups. The Starfleet officers who investigate violations, and the silicon-based life forms who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories. So I told my wife, look, if you need a new food replicator, I suggest you replicate a new one. It ain't like I'm on salary.
Hey, you're preaching to the choir, my friend. My third ex-wife used to pull that, and I'd give her the We do this to better ourselves and the rest of humanity speech.
And she bought that line?
Nah, that's why she's an ex. She left me for some upwardly mobile Orion. She's a slave these days, but I hear she can replicate a hell of a meatloaf.
Benny, look!
Geez, Ray, you want to slow down? I downed a swimming pool's worth of scotch since I won that high school track medal. Now what do we have here?
Looks like your Vic is one of them Ferengi.
Another milestone in deductive reasoning.
DNA scans identify him as a guy named Brand, a solicitor.
It's gonna be tougher trying to find someone who didn't want to kill this guy.
Anyway, there are no apparent wounds of any kind. The medical examiner is en route. We'll know more after he examines the feller. Well, until the ME gets here, I want a portable stasis field set up around the body. I want special attention paid to the Vic's hands for particle traces. I also want his lobes scanned for possible foreign DNA. His ears, Detective? He's Ferengi. I guarantee he's had Umox in the last 24 hours. Call it a hunch.
Why, you got something against a man dying with a smile on his face?
Welcome to episode 6 of Published in Primetime, where we list this week's brand new missions. First up, on the Fed side, we've got Spawn of Medusa Part 5, Defeat the Evil by Duke of Rock, the conclusion to his epic 5-part series. Rising Sunset by Ceridian. Terror Knocks at the Door by Admiral Murphy. Keeping Up with the Jascens by Casmodian. Hijacked by Pendra 80. Dreams of Salvation and Glory by Tucana. Hollow Justice by Commodore Bob. Federation Desperation by Mazakin. Forget Me Not by Sovereign 77X. And Atlas Affair Part 2 by Nagorg. And we have only 2 on the Klingon side. Soldiers of the Empire by Trekkie 1134 and Dead Men Tell No Tales by Ovarius. And that's it for Publish in Prime Time for the week. If you have a mission you'd like to see featured, drop us a line at mailbag@primetimeugc.com.